Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 p.m. time for the news bulletin on Channel 2. I'm Bethha, and starting off with the main headlines of the day. Prime Minister Madbouli meets Qatari Prime Minister on bilateral ties and regional issues. Foreign Minister Abdulati holds phone talks with Filipino counterpart marking 80 years of diplomatic ties launch. And UN warns famine in Gaza is at breaking point as over 20 martyred in intensified Israeli offensive. Welcome back. The news in full. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today hailed the promoted bilateral ties with Qatar in different political, economic and investment fields. The Prime Minister made these remarks in a meeting with Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Qasim al-Thani on bilateral cooperation domains, along with a set of issues of mutual concern. Madbouli asserted Egypt's continued contact with the Qatari business community, which enhanced its confidence in the available national investment opportunities. The Qatari Prime Minister, meanwhile, affirmed his country's keenness on expanding all-round bilateral cooperation. Sheikh Mohammed noted that the two sides attach an utmost importance of intensifying efforts in coordination with the United States to hammer out a ceasefire deal for Gaza, and reiterated the absolute rejection of any attempts to evacuate Palestinians from their land. Minister of Foreign Immigration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdulati today announced the launch of a political consultation mechanism with Qatar to further promote bilateral ties. The minister made these remarks as he addressed a press conference with visiting Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Qasim al-Thani on the outcome of the talks. Abdulati said that the meeting reviewed Egypt's promising investment opportunities and deep reforms conducted by the government to facilitate investment procedures for foreign investors, particularly the Qatari businessmen. Egypt's top diplomat, meanwhile, pressed for political solutions to end genocide and halt the bloodshed of the innocent civilians and unarmed Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. He reiterated Egypt's continued efforts in coordination with Qatar to alleviate the humanitarian suffering of Gaza population through mediating a ceasefire agreement, which allows the access of larger amounts of humanitarian aid to the war-torn Strip. The Qatari Prime Minister, meanwhile, lauded the upgraded bilateral ties as well as Egypt's pivotal role in the regional security and stability. Minister of Foreign Immigration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdulati today co-chaired the 6th Egyptian Qatari Higher Committee meeting with Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Qasim al-Thani. Egypt's top diplomat said that the meeting reflects the will of the political leadership of the two countries to enhance bilateral ties, which witnessed a boom in the recent periods. At the meeting, the two sides signed a number of memoranda of understanding in the social insurance, agriculture, and food security fields. They also announced the launch of a joint political consultations mechanism on the prominent regional issues of mutual concern. Minister of Foreign Immigration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdulati today held a phone call with Philippines Foreign Affairs Secretary Teresa Lazaro. The minister greeted his Filipino counterpart on assuming the post and expressed Egypt's keen interest in boosting bilateral ties in all fields, marking 80 years since the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Abdulati briefed his counterpart on Egypt's foreign investment opportunities and its commitment to economic partnership with Asian countries. The Philippines top diplomat hailed the rooted bilateral ties and thanked Egypt being among the prime countries to recognize the independence of the Asian nation. Egyptians across governorates cast ballots today, the second day in the runoff for the 2025 Senate elections that was held earlier this month. The National Elections Authority Executive Manager Councillor Ahmed Bindari said that the two-day vote will be conducted at 1,367 polling stations in the governorates of Al-Gharbiyya, Bani Suwaif, Al-Aqsar, Al-Ismailiyya and Al-Wadi Al-Gadid. The runoff election is contested by 10 candidates vying for 5 seats. Bindari was addressing a press conference at the NEA's Central Operations Room after balloting in the runoff round for Egyptians abroad was completed at the Egyptian embassies and consulates worldwide. The runoff vote for expats took place on Monday and Tuesday at 136 polling stations at these diplomatic missions in 117 countries, and 195 Senate seats out of the 200 seats to be chosen by elections were decided in the first round of the 2025 Senate elections that was held on the 1st and 2nd of August for Egyptian expats and on 4 and 5 of August nationwide. The 25th Humanitarian and Relief Aid Convoy Zaid al-Izza entered through a sub-portal of the Rafah border crossing to Qarm Abu Salim border, crossing southeastern Gaza, and the convoy provided from Egypt to Gazans is part of Egypt's continued efforts to access more than 36 trucks loaded with 500,000 tons of humanitarian and relief aid via the Egyptian side of the Rafah land outlet in the Palestinian territory. The move is conducted thanks to the efforts of 35,000 volunteers and in coordination with the Egyptian Red Crescent, meeting the needs of Palestinians in the war-torn strip to alleviate their unprecedented humanitarian suffering. All United Nations Security Council members, except the United States, said the famine in Gaza was a man-made crisis and warned that the use of starvation as a weapon of war is banned under international humanitarian law. In a joint statement, the 14 Council members called for an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages held by Hamas, a substantive surge of aid throughout Gaza, and for the Israeli occupation troops to immediately and unconditionally lift all restrictions on aid delivery. The integrated food security phase classification system has said 514,000 people, nearly a quarter of Palestinians in Gaza, are experiencing famine, and that is due to rise by 641,000 by the end of September. U.S. President Donald Trump presided over a policy meeting on the Israeli genocide, war in Gaza, and post-war plans for the Palestinian territory, with the attendance of former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and former Trump Middle East envoy Jared Kushner. U.S. Secretary of Department said that Trump White House officials Blair and Kushner discussed the hostage crisis plans to escalate food aid deliveries. And separately, the U.S. State Department said Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Foreign Minister of the Israeli Occupation Authority in Washington and discussed Gaza and regional issues. Britain, France and Germany announced that they will begin the process of reimposing UN sanctions on Iran at the UN Security Council later today. The trio, known as the E3, met Iran on Tuesday to try to revive diplomacy over the nuclear program before they lose the ability in mid-October to restore sanctions on Tehran that were lifted under the 2015 nuclear agreement with world powers. The E3 have now decided to trigger the so-called snapback of UN sanctions over accusations that Iran has violated the 2015 deal that aimed to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Iran has warned of a harsh response if sanctions are reinstated. Russia pounded Ukraine with deadly missiles and drone strikes earlier today in a sweeping attack that President Volodymyr Zelensky said was Moscow's answer to diplomatic efforts to end its war. At least 18, including 4 children, were killed in the capital Kiev. The strikes damaged the European Union mission and British Council offices in the city and the European Union and London summoned Russian envoys to protest. There were no reports of casualties at either side. Russia said its attack had hit military industrial facilities and bases, and that Ukraine had also attacked Russian targets. However, the Kremlin said it was still interested in pursuing peace talks. Ministry of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat said that announced the Economic and Social Development Plan for the fiscal year 2025-2026 reflected the new strategy adopted by her ministry, the Finance for Development. Dr. Mashat's remarks were made as the Ministry of Planning was announcing the main pillars of the Social and Economic Development Plan for the current fiscal year, which officially started last July. The minister added that her ministry's new approach came as the state is seeking to continue the path of development. Egypt's bourse closed higher today amid purchases by Arab investors and local and foreign corporations against sell-offs by Arab and foreign investors in Arab corporations. And market capital of listed companies added 17 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 2.4 trillion pounds at the end of the transactions. The benchmark EGX 30 rose 0.9%, and the equal-weighted indices EGX 70 and EGX 100 jumped 0.7% and 0.7% respectively. Viewers, by that we come to the end of our news bulletin. Thanks for watching. That was Basmata signing off.